He lives here in Miami, but maybe not all of us we know him. So let me introduce him a little bit. He is the co-founder and president of getaroom.com, which was awarded the best hotel booking site from Promers.com. Previously, after receiving his law degree from Cornell, Bob practiced securities and corporate law. Later, he co-founded Hotels Reservation Network, which became Hotels.com. Took it public in 2000 and merged it with Expedia in 2003. So he has a lot of travel industry expert, and because of that, he is a frequent source for many major news organizations. He is an author of 2 books. He's going to talk about one today, that is the Biblical Secrets of the Business Success. And he's also a professor. He won many awards. He lives here in Miami with his family, and he is an avid triathlete and kite surfer. So ladies and gentlemen, let's hear what Bob Diener is going to tell us tonight.
So Denise, thank you for that a great introduction. So I thought what I'd do is maybe speak for a shorter time and open up to Q&A, because I'm sure many of you will have questions, especially given we're in a COVID situation and the travel industry is heavily impacted. And I know a lot of people want to know what's going on with the travel industry, with the hotel industry, and so forth. But let me start out with, Rabbi, you asked me to speak a little bit about my book. So I'll tell you how it started. We have a family tradition every Friday night. We typically have a lot of people over. And we go around the room and everybody talks about the good news of the week, and they can ask a question to somebody else. So we went around the room, and I talked about that we had great success at my newer company, getaroom.com. We reached our next milestone of growth and profitability. And then someone jumped up and said, Bob, how did you know what to do? You didn't go to business school, and you went to law school. You didn't really have a mentor. You didn't work in a business. You started off in a law firm. So how did you know what to do in business? So I thought about it for a couple of minutes, and I said, well, I have to thank my parents. And then my mother jumped in and said, what does it have to do with me? And I said, well, you sent me to Jewish day school, and a lot of what I learned in business, I learned from Jewish principles I learned in the Jewish day school, and for what I learned from studying the Bible. So many of these principles, I believe, led to a great part of my success. So let me give you a couple of examples. So you know how probably the most celebrated holiday of the Jewish people is Passover. And what do we always say on Passover? Right? Right? How is this night different than all other nights? So that's always an expression that's stuck in my mind. Well, when you start off a business, and I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs that are here on the Zoom. So the first question you have to ask, and before I started Hotels.com, getaroom.com, and other companies that I've started, the first thing we ask is, Ma nishtana ha-business hazeh mikola businesses. So how is this business different than every other business? Because fundamentally, if you're an entrepreneur, you need a value proposition. You need a real value proposition, and you need to be able to articulate that and to show how you're different. You know, people come to me all the time, and they say they have the greatest idea since sliced bread. And then I ask them, are you familiar with this company that does exactly what they do? And they never heard of them because they didn't do their homework. And then I say, well, how are you any different than these companies? And they can't really explain how they're any different. They're really just the same. So they're trying to establish something that doesn't have a real value proposition. Well, what I focus on every time I start a company is trying to find something that's very different than anything out there in the marketplace. So when I started Hotels.com, there was almost nobody booking hotels online. it was an entirely new channel. So we offered better rates in that channel. And if you went online, you got a better deal. Now, getaroom.com, we actually do it quite different. So because almost everybody books online, now how many people here book their travel online? You can raise your hand, right? Just about everyone. So everybody's looking at the rates. So hotels, airlines, car rental companies, cruise lines, they're all worried that if you shop online and find a better deal, everybody else is going to want it. And so all of a sudden, rates keep dropping in the marketplace. So we came up with a couple of great ideas when we started getaroom.com. The first one was what we call unpublished rates. So what are unpublished rates? So what we do is hotels give us two rates. They give us one rate, and we publish it when you go to getaroom.com. You can go on our site, you can find it, it's very competitive, they're great deals. But then we say, call us for a better rate. And if you call us, we have about 80,000 hotels all over the world that will give you a much better rate. Typically 10 to 25% off, but it can be as much as 70% off. But we can't publish it anywhere because if we publish it, everybody sees it. So our customers, they do all the research online, they find the best deal, and then they spend 2 minutes and call us and say, I want to go, this is the hotel I'm looking for. Do you have an unpublished rate? And then the bells go off, the whistles go off, and all of a sudden, the consumer gets a deal that can be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% less than the public rate. So that's our value proposition. So in our business, in our current business, getaroom.com, the first thing we did was come up with this new value proposition. We got our suppliers, our hotels to buy into it and participate. And for consumers, it's a great deal because you shop online and then you pick up the phone for a minute, you get a better rate, and everybody's happy. So that's kind of a fundamental principle of entrepreneurship. So what else? Take customer service. So customer service, has anyone had a customer service issue while traveling? A flight delay, lost your luggage, the hotel room is noisy, you're next to the elevator. I mean, all kinds of things, right? So what's the right standard of care for customer service? In a business, it's very difficult to come up with the appropriate standard of care, and it's even more difficult to train your employees how to deal with that standard of care. So in a lot of companies, they hire consultants, they have big, thick manuals, they have weekend retreats, and they try to put different scenarios into different boxes and train their people how to handle customer service. So we do it totally differently at all my companies. Because what I know about customer service, I learned when I was in Jewish day school. It's in the third book of the Torah, Leviticus. It's a fundamental principle that, a famous rabbi named Hillel was once asked, explain Judaism on one foot. What did he say? Treat others like you want to be treated. That's a fundamental principle of care. So in all my companies, the way we train our employees on customer service is really very simple. There's no manuals, there's no retreats, there's no consultants. We tell our employees, put yourself in the shoes of the customer and treat them like you would want to be treated if you have that exact situation. Now, the answer may be no, they may not be due a refund, they may not, maybe they are, but that depends on whether it's the right thing to do, and whether it's the reasonable thing to do, and whether that was how you would want to be treated if you were in that same situation. So that's how we've handled customer care in all of my companies. And that's a fundamental principle that I learned by growing up in a Jewish home and going to a Jewish day school. So what else? So, to be successful in business, it takes hard work. It takes doing your homework. And there's a famous saying in Proverbs. It says, he who deals with a slack hand becomes poor, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. So what does that mean? We learned from the book of Proverbs, which is one of my favorite books because it has so much wisdom. The ethics of the fathers and Proverbs are two of my favorites. And what it means is that to be successful in your business, and really whatever you're doing in life, you have to be diligent. You have to do your homework. You have to tear things apart. So I spent years, I went to Hebrew Academy in Miami Beach. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. And I spent years in Talmud, and we would just tear things apart. We would have one line, and we would spend a week on that one line, just debating it. And we learned about one rabbi says this, one rabbi says something else. But we would debate it, we would tear it apart, and we would really do our homework and really analyze the situation. So that's kind of the training that I grew up with. And I believe that discipline ultimately led to my success at hotels.com, at getaroom.com, and all the businesses that I've been involved in. Because Judaism teaches us a real level of diligence, a real level of analysis, and really doing your homework and tearing things apart and understanding it and analyzing it before you come up and you really start your business and you bring it into the marketplace. So what else? What separates a Jewish business, or what I call biblical entrepreneurship, someone that wants to follow the proper road, from just a regular entrepreneur? What do we do differently? Well, most people define success as reaching a level of your career, reaching a certain stature, reaching a certain level of income, getting to a certain position. But that's not how Judaism defines success. So Judaism defines success as, all the profits, all the kind of growth in your career. That's just a pathway. Success is what you do with that. So do you give back? Do you help your community? Do you give tzedakah? That's what ultimately distinguishes what I call in my book a biblical entrepreneur from every other entrepreneur. Because if you don't have an ultimate purpose, you don't really have meaning in what you're doing. But if you have an ultimate purpose, if your ultimate purpose is to use the funds to start a family, to use the funds to give tzedakah, to give back, and if you use your business kind of as a vehicle to do that, then you're bringing your business to a higher level. And that fundamentally makes a major difference, because then you really have meaning in everything that you do. And I'll give you some examples of things that we do, things that we've done in our prior companies. And there's lots of companies out there in the marketplace that do this, and it's mainly the very successful companies. And I believe that's a big part of the reason why they're so successful. So we often do employee matching. For example, during different calamities, during past hurricanes, we matched any donations that our employees gave to charities that were helping victims of a disaster. The company matched it, or my business partner and I matched it. And so what did that do? First of all, it made our employees charitable. It made our employees feel good about where they work. It helped these organizations. And our customers learned about it, and our customers became more loyal to the company because they see we're good citizens and they see we're giving back. A lot of companies, they call it, there's a term called social entrepreneurship, where a lot of companies will try to get involved in the community and try to make positive change and try to do things that are helpful. We used to have what we called an employee volunteer day. And we required every employee to take one day, and they're paid by the company. And we would take one day, and they had to volunteer to do something in the community. So some people chose beach cleanup. Some people went to the old age home. Some people went to did food drives. Different people did different charitable, volunteer work that was meaningful to them. And a lot of people will say, because we were a public company when we were doing this, and a lot of times, our investors would say, "Are you crazy taking a day out of productivity for your employees?" And my response would always be that our employees come back and they're so much more productive because they gave a day. They were paid to give a day to the community, and they felt so good about it that they made up for all that lost time, and they were so much more productive and so much more loyal to the company. And that's a big part of why our companies have succeeded, because we try to operate our business in a way that gives back to the community, and a way that makes our employees feel part of the community and feel that they're doing something that's not just bringing home a salary, but that we have another purpose and that we're trying to do good in the community and we're trying to make positive change. So those are all types of things that I learned growing up in a Jewish home, growing up in a Jewish community, being involved and seeing my family being involved in the Jewish community, learning these principles from the Bible, from the Torah, that I believe largely led to my success. So let me stop there. And, my book's available on Amazon. You can just put my name in or put Biblical Secrets to Business Success, and you can find it on Amazon. But I know a lot of you have questions. And let me stop there and let me open it up to Q&A.
Sure. Can I start here? Okay.
Sure.
Right. I'm in, I actually work in hospitality as well, in consulting. Do you say that consumers are better using off the market rates than they are being loyal to a promotion program in the long run for cost?
So I'm not quite sure what the question is, but there's a lot of different segments in travel, and some people make a decision because they want to have loyalty points at a certain brand, for example, and that's their motivation to book. And especially with business travelers that may be directed to certain hotel groups because of a business relationship, or maybe because they want to reach the next level with their frequent stay program. And then you have another bucket of consumers that is mainly wants a certain product at a certain price range in a certain location, and they're really brand agnostic. And so for them, they want to find the best deal. So if they can do it in a way that doesn't compete with the hotel's kind of direct marketing, and they can get a better deal, everybody's happy. But hotels are mainly, hotels all want more business, but they don't want to lose customers that they get anyway. So what we try to do is we find, and I mentioned one of them, the unpublished rates. Is one way to find a better deal. We have, probably 20 different ways to find consumers better deals, but we do it in a way that doesn't conflict with the hotel's direct marketing. So those that would be paying a higher price, and maybe they're paying a higher price because they're getting amenities, they may have food and beverage, they may have certain upgrades, they may be getting frequent stay points or frequent flyer points, and that's important to a lot of people. But other people mainly are concerned about price if they have the location, and if they can get a better deal, and hotels feel that they're not just taking a customer and lowering the rate, but they're taking a customer that would have gone somewhere else, then that's a great proposition for the hotel. It's great for the consumer because everybody wants a deal, and so everybody wins in that situation. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, sure. If someone's a frequent traveler, do they find it more the cost? Would they find the cost? I suppose it varies the formulas they use for how to discount over the long run if you're reach a certain status. Okay. Thanks.
Sorry, I couldn't hear your whole question. You got cut off.
I just meant over the long run, if someone's a frequent traveler, whether it was just more of whether you've looked at the other the loyalty formulas to see whether the long run cost matches the discounts that you promote. So
yeah. So let me give you an idea. Let me give you an example. What's going on in the marketplace today? So today there's a great shift going on, and even though we had COVID, travel in the leisure segment, for example, has largely recovered. Travel in the business segment has not. Group travel is dead. So the highest paying traveler is not traveling today, but the deal seeking traveler is traveling. So the average rate in the marketplace today is 30 to 40% less than it was in January, but the number of bookings is high. So the type of traveler traveling right now, hotels need to do promotions to attract that type of traveler. And people are taking advantage of the deals, and people are booking. They're driving, mostly are driving. Most are staying closer to home. But it's a very rate-driven market today. Now, that may change dramatically once there's a solution to COVID. And then the dynamics may change, and it's going to get so busy because there's going to be a rebound that what people care about is just finding a room, even though it may be at a much higher price. So it depends on the dynamics of the marketplace. Today, people are looking for better rates, but tomorrow they may be looking for just finding a room. And today also, consumers are shifting up in quality. So consumers are, number one, concerned about cleanliness, sanitation. So consumers that would have stayed at a 2 or 3 star hotel are looking for the 4-star or 4.5 or 5-star hotel today. And they're willing to pay more, even though the rate may be less at those hotels than it was a few months ago. But a lot of consumers are going up in quality and actually paying more than they would have paid, even though the average rate for those hotels is less. So I hope that helps.
It certainly does. Thank you very much. I was wondering about this COVID situation for new entrepreneurs. You were talking about how to look at the market different. Do you have any advice for the young entrepreneurs that want to start their own startup and they found 2020 and coronavirus and they don't know how to face this?
So, what's interesting is because a lot of people are worried, how can I start my business now? What's going to go on with my business? Those that are really innovative, and especially those that have adopted online tools and have brought, I talked earlier about a value proposition to the marketplace. So we have seen the value of high-tech companies, startup companies, go through the roof over the last few months. So you can see the public ones, and there's tons of them. There's from the DocuSign to Fastly to Shopify to Square, on and on and on. These companies' valuations have gone up, 5, 10 times, sometimes 20, 30 times. Zoom that we're on. It's market price. It's market that cap is through the roof, and there are actually thousands of companies like that. They may not all be public, but that are in the high-tech space and that are bringing unique value propositions to the marketplace that enable technology for work at home, that are doing something a little bit different, that are making it easier on the transition from work to home, that are enabling companies to reduce costs, to keep track of employees' time, to communicate better with employees and customers. There are so many, there's more innovation that I've seen in the last 3 months that I've seen in the last 3 years. So it's actually an amazing time for an entrepreneur to launch something if they have a really good concept, if it really has a value proposition, if it's really doing something that hasn't been done before. And because so many companies and people are looking for that new technology, for something else. And the marketplace is valuing those companies very high right now because we have seen the biggest shift in adoption from offline to online in the last 3 months than we've seen in the last, since the birth of the internet. It's lightning speed. Almost the entire marketplace is now, adaptive to learning, to studying, to meeting, to doing what they need to do online. And companies are effective. Our company, Get a Room, we are 99% virtual since mid-March. And we had, thousands of people in offices all over the world. And today, almost everyone is working from home. And we're, I was going to say we're just as effective, but we're probably more effective because we've cut costs and we've saved people time. And we had these tools because we're a tech company, but we've adapted new tools and we've added so much technology in the last 2 or 3 months that it has made us so much more efficient. And so we've gone from being kind of a blended world of online, offline, to being in a world where almost the entire market has adapted the online technology and online tools. And those entrepreneurs that are in that new world and that come up with innovation can be extremely successful in today's marketplace, despite COVID. So very good question.
Thank you. Jason Wasser is want to ask the next question.
Sure.
So with the pandemic pivot, and you're seeing all these companies shift to online, like REI just built this huge, massive, beautiful campus. And right before they moved in, they decided they're not going to move into it, and they're selling everything they just built. Mm-hmm. Century 21 just went bankrupt today. Are there companies so people are saying well, it's the pandemic that killed that business, like Century 21, but is that, my belief is that the pandemic just expedited what was already happening in the culture of that brick and mortar business section. And what are your thoughts on that, as far as that this would have possibly happened anyway in a lot of these companies because they're not adapting, they're not pivoting early enough, and therefore all these brick and mortar stores and these chains and department stores are closing, and the pandemic just expedited it? Or do you think there's also something else going on culturally?
No, so we've seen a shift that would have taken 10 years is taking months at this point. And when I've adapted the online technology. We actually built our first internet site in 1995. Okay, and almost nobody knew what the internet was. And it was a new technology. Nobody really knew whether or not it worked. I mean, we embraced it because we just saw it as an incremental way to grow business and do something differently. But nobody knew if it would work. And some of the issues were speed. It was only recently that we all have access to very inexpensive broadband in our homes. Just think a couple of years ago, the internet speed was so much slower. So we couldn't do this. Right? We couldn't all be on here. We'd be seeing cracking, and we wouldn't hear our voices clearly. But now almost everybody has broadband, and getting on a Zoom call is easy, right? So what we've seen is that a shift. It should have taken place over the next 5 to 10 years or longer. And that shift is from the bricks and mortar store to the online store. Education being primarily in a classroom, in a typical classic environment, versus some type of real blend where a professor can be anywhere, a student can be anywhere. People can listen to the classes. They can repay the classes. They can ask questions in different ways. So these are, some institutions adopted it, some did not. Some had some type of blend. Most did not. Many universities were really struggling with, they really want to adopt any online tools. Many businesses were struggling. Do I really want to have an online sales division? Or do I really want people physically in the store? And we've always taken the position that business should be a blend of both. We talked about the call center a little bit. And people used to tell me, Bob, are you crazy? You're in a technology business. Everything should be online. And I said, you're right. Everything should be online, but you need to have a strong backup in your call center because customers want to be able to call for support. And if you don't have good support, how are you going to support your online division? And I've seen so many companies that just build their online part and forget about the whole infrastructure and the backbone. And so it works. It's a blend. But what we're seeing is disintermediation happening so much quicker. So, in the past couple of years, we've seen, disintermediation with car services, right? We've seen the Uber, the Lyfts, and that's revolutionized how we travel. And not as many people take taxis anymore. Or a lot more people will take an Uber or Lyft or something similar because it's very easy it's simple and easy to use. It's inexpensive. So that's been a disintermediation. We're seeing, in the travel industry, for example, there used to be thousands of travel agencies. You'd see them really in every neighborhood and every corner. And that's how people did business. They physically walked into a travel agency and dealt with the travel agent. Well, I guess you can blame me for a lot of that disintermediation because we shifted most of that online. But there's so many industries that have that same disintermediation going on. And it just would have taken so much longer. So do you really need to walk into that mall store to buy something where you've seen the product, you have it, and you're just buying a replacement, right? So maybe the model is you have a showroom somewhere for those that want to go and see it, and it's small and it's inexpensive. And maybe you have, one location in the city. But most of the transactions can be online, and you keep that cost low. We see companies like Amazon constantly innovating. They have these stores, so they have some kind of blend, but they're really high-tech stores. You pick something up, it automatically puts your charge on. You don't need a clerk. You don't need. They can keep costs really low. Those companies that have taken a long time to adapt are the ones that we're seeing going out of business today, that are going into bankruptcy. Now, that likely would have happened in a few years, but it's just happening much faster. You have to be nimble. You have to adapt. And those companies that have built their kind of infrastructure with adaptability. We try to program everything in an architecture where we can change quickly, because the marketplace is changing so quickly. Today we book online. Tomorrow, we're probably going to be booking in a totally different way. We're probably going to book with glasses. You put on your glasses, you'll see the room, you'll see the airline seat, you'll click, and that's probably how you'll book, some form of that. Very different than what we do today. But we're looking at every one of those technologies because when that's ready, we want to be there. And if you're not, then eventually you're going to become a dinosaur. And so there's a lot of dinosaurs today. And there's the old world and the new world. And if you can't shift to the new world, then you're basically going out of business at some point. So I hope that makes sense.
Ariel also has a question.
Yeah, so hey Bob, so I have a quick question, kind of extending on what you were saying. Yeah, so my question, I was kind of wondering your strategy for kind of analyzing your competitors and kind of what they're doing and knowing how to quickly kind of update your product and kind of seeing how to very fast update and add a certain value maybe they're not adding, and knowing how to keep doing that constantly and knowing how to make sure you add the right value and all that jazz. So I was kind of wondering what's your take on that and the best way to always keep updating appropriately?
Right. So I'm what you call a conservative entrepreneur, and I believe you constantly need to innovate and come up with new ideas. And so we have our weekly executive meetings, And every once in a while, my executives come to me and they say, you know, in these meetings, and they say, this competitor, you know, has copied exactly what we're doing. You know, what do we do? So I tell them, that's great. I said, what do you mean it's great? I said, that's a compliment. Well, they're copying what we're doing. We've got 10 more ideas and changes that we're in the middle of implementing. And we'll take them 6 months to a year to figure that out. So don't worry so much about the competition. And you know, I had a rabbi in Jewish day school, and he used to tell me, "Don't worry about everybody else. Just look in the mirror." You know, because your greatness and your capabilities are really within, and don't try to be like everybody else, but follow what you believe is right, and be the best you can possibly be. So yes, we always want to know what competitors are doing, and there's lots of tools to check competitive pricing and check, you know, the business models and so forth. But we don't spend that much time worrying so much about competition. Other than pricing, of course, is, you know, critical and having inventory. But in terms of models and methods and innovation, we mostly look at ourselves and we ask ourselves, how can we make this better and how can we make it different? And we're constantly innovating and constantly changing. And when we see an issue in the marketplace, for example, you know, hotels have a very tough time getting their amount of data out in the marketplace. And because they have so much difficulty, you know, putting out so much data, they need tools to be able to manage that data. So we have advanced caching technology that we work with hotels on. For example, even though a hotel can't handle a load, we can take something and we can cache it. So we can cache it, meaning we put it in a database and someone can grab it, but without having to hit a hotel's database. And what does that do? That totally releases the load from the hotel, and they can serve so many more people. But what happens when a price changes? So we have technology that tells us, well, in Las Vegas, the price changes every 4 seconds, but in Orlando, it changes every 6 hours. So we will adapt to that knowledge that we have, and we'll constantly innovate and constantly change to come up with a caching technology that's very efficient in the marketplace. So, right, again, it's not so much worrying about the competition, but it's looking at yourself and figuring out, you know, how can you be better and how can you constantly innovate? And this is a world where you know, we have great tools that are out there, and you just have to constantly think about it and constantly think how you can be better and how you can improve. Great. I think someone else had their hand up.
I did.
Benny.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for this very interesting presentation. I wanted to ask 2 questions. The first is that in a market like this that is a lot driven by a price, and selling a hotel which is relatively a generic product, because, you know, have a name, you have a date, everybody sells the same. Usually businesses try to take a bigger part of the supply chain and then take not just the hotel room, but also take the car rental and take the airlines and give it all together in their website. Now, in your website, in the hotel.com and get a room, you strictly focus just on the hotel side. How is that? How did you decide to stick only to this part?
Right, so that's a good question. So what you're talking about is packaging, packaging product and packaging technology. We don't directly do packaging, but we do packaging with many of our partners. So, for example, we will work with a company that sells packages. Now, what's the benefit of a package? Right, today packages are almost moot because so few people are traveling by air, and a package is typically hotel and airfare. So if we sell you a package, right, you don't know what the price is of the airfare, and you don't know what the price is of the hotel. You know what the airline is and you know what the hotel is, but you don't know the individual pricing. So we can go to the hotel and we can go to the airline and we can say, look, if you take 15% off the prices, I can offer this package for a 5-night stay in Las Vegas at a really good rate, and we're going to sell 10 times more than if we sold it at the bar or retail rate. And it's not going to impact your business at all because nobody knows what the rate is of each individual component. So that's the beauty of a package. We can work on we call it revenue management, which means, what happens, or what's the price elasticity of demand? So when you change the price, what happens to the demand factor? In revenue management, every time we change the price by a cent, it's going to impact your demand, right? And so where are you most efficient? So we can show through our modeling that if we adjust pricing on each individual component of a package, and sometimes it'll have meals, sometimes it'll have cars, it can have tours, but we have the ability to price them differently than we would price them if they're alone. And so that's the beauty of a package. Now, at Get a Room and Hotels and what we did at Hotels.com, those are sites that sell hotels alone because there's so much demand for hotels alone. And those sites, what we do there is the real value proposition is number one, you as a consumer, try to find the best deal in a hotel. If you had to go to every hotel, it would be a nightmare. And this is what you had to do before the internet. If you're going to New York and you're going New Year's Eve and it's busy, you probably have to call 50 hotels before you find a hotel. And if you want to shop for the best deal, especially on a busy night, it would take you hours. So you come to getaroom.com and we've got every hotel in New York there, just about. And you can see the rate at every hotel and you can pick the one you want. And not only that, we're constantly working with hotels to put what we call these flash sales, short-term sales online, and they convince you to make an instant purchase. So for example, you may come to the site and it says, the regular rate is $150. If you buy this within 10 minutes, you can get it for $140. Right? Why do we do that? Because most people will go to a site 4 to 5 times before they make a decision. So we work with the hotel, and the hotel is very happy to offer you $10 less if you make a decision in 10 minutes. But if you come back 10 minutes later, it's back to $150. So we can work with hotels to have many different promotions, even for the hotel alone, that will help their sales and help their yield in the marketplace that they couldn't do by themselves. So it's not just a commodity, it's not just a hotel and a commodity, but it's how we work with our suppliers to price it properly in the marketplace to increase their sales and maximize their yield.
Hi, Bob.
Hi.
I have a question for you. I'm not familiar with your second website, Get a Room, but I'm pretty sure I've used hotels.com in the past, but it seems to me that both are very similar to one another. When you sold hotels.com, what made you want to have a second site similar? What do you believe it's something that you can do different within the same field, within the same area?
That's a very good question. So when I started with hotels.com, I mentioned earlier that the internet was a new technology, and our value proposition was go to the internet, we're going to give you a better deal, because very few people booked online, 2, 3, 4, 5% when we started. By the time I sold hotels.com, it was 2003. I'd say 80% of the marketplace was booking hotels online. And so, hotels were mainly concerned about what's called a rate parity. Rate parity means having the same price across all channels. So that value proposition of having a better deal on our site really went away. And our real value proposition was what I talked with Benny about earlier, was the convenience and having everything in one place and so forth, and being really easy to book. So, when I sold, I had a 5-year non-compete after I sold Hotels.com. People used to come to me all the time, say, Bob, how do I get a better deal? I used to find great deals on your site. Now I don't find them anymore. It's just the same rate everybody else has. So when my non-compete was over after 5 years, the state of the industry was that hotels needed more business. Consumers were really looking for deals. And so we launched Get a Room, not really to compete with our former company. And so we didn't, we don't advertise on television, and you don't hear about us, and we don't take out big ads. It's all word of mouth. And we did it very differently. We did it we talked about that unpublished rate system. So you go to Get a Room and you can call and get a better rate. We talked when I talked to Benny about what was called the flash sale. We work with hotels and we put up very short-term sales. We run thousands of them all the time, where the rates could be $10, $20, $30, $40, $50 less if you book it in a very short window. It's called a flash sale. So we do a lot of things like that at Get a Room that we didn't do at Hotels.com, and that make us different. And we have a very different audience, because our audience at Get a Room, it's a deal-seeking, value, leisure audience, where a Hotels.com audience is a real general-wide audience because they advertise prolifically. And at Get a Room, it's a much different, differentiated marketplace. So very, very, although you see a lot of similar product, they're often, the way we get the rates and the way we display them is just very different. So we have time for one more question.
I will ask if nobody has.
Okay, go ahead.
Since right now it is for the most of companies, it's a matter of a cash flow problem until we pass this pandemic, because it will happen at some point. Why don't we see more companies selling just coupon, basically just a voucher, almost like a call option to use in the future, just to get their cash flow in place for this, to bridge this time?
Well, it's a great question. And we actually, that was when COVID hit, the first thing we did was say, we could have minimal business for a year to 18 months. So we need to have liquidity. And as an entrepreneur, the one thing you want to be careful about, and this is something else that I learned through Bible study. You learn in Proverbs that you don't want to be heavily in debt, because you're always the creditor's always on top, the debtor's always at the bottom. So you never want to be heavily in debt, because you never know when a crisis is going to hit. So we didn't have a lot of debt. We had lines of credit. We called them all. And the first thing we did was make sure we had a lot of liquidity to get through 18 months, even if we had zero business. So that was number one. Second thing we did was look and say, well, how can we get access to more cash at a time when people aren't traveling? So we talked about your exact idea. Sell vouchers, sell them at a discount, and people would buy travel in advance. And we actually started to program that in the marketplace, and then the market rebounded like this. And we went from late March, we were probably down 80 to 90% in bookings. And by June 1st, about half of that came back. And today we actually are booking more in volume and number of bookings than we did pre-COVID, but at much lower rates. So our revenue is way down, but our actual activity is up. So because we had such a fast rebound, we didn't end up selling those kind of vouchers, but that doesn't mean others can't sell them in the marketplace. Some do. Consumers typically don't like to buy something in advance. People typically, people want to buy travel when they're ready, when they're thinking about travel and they're ready to book. So very few people will just go, okay, I'm going to buy this now, and because I'm going to travel next year. You'd have to give them such a good deal to give them that incentive. Most people just don't buy that way. Travel is impulsive. You get excited about going, you go online, you book. People don't go and say, I'm gonna go bank $1,000 and I'll use it, a year or 2 years from now because I got 25% off. Some people will, but most people won't. So between that and the kind of rapid recovery that we saw, that's why we didn't do it. So let me wish all of you lots of hatzlacha, lots of luck. And again, as I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs and potential entrepreneurs on. So, my advice to you is be thorough, be diligent, do your homework, follow biblical principles. And again, you can find my book at Amazon, and I talk about a lot of things I talked about tonight and a lot more. And don't forget, always give back. With that, everyone have a great night. It's a pleasure.
Bob, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. This is your second at Kspace, the first physical, now virtual. I want to thank you so much for your time, and also tell you that it's incredible that what you have done years ago is happening now. We need it. Actually, Kspace is growing thanks to the technology, and we have young people right now from all over the world joining your class, and God willing, the next class, and then tomorrow we have other activities until Sunday night, and we are helping everybody to put together. And the good thing is that doesn't matter where you live, where you are, we are all connected. And a lot of couples are dating now, so from these amazing platforms online. So basically what you started years ago, now is also part of our today life and routine.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Well, keep up the great work, connecting people to their heritage. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, the most important, Bob, is that these guys and girls are all singles, and they need to meet someone, God willing, soon. So, that's actually the idea. We bring you here so people want to listen to you, but on the side, they're gonna start seeing each other and hopefully get married. So you have part of this hus of the marriage.
God willing. That's great. That's great.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you very much.
All the best to all of you.
And continue. Every year we will have you at Kspace, hopefully.
Sounds great. All right. Everybody have a great night.